Hey guys, this is Myleik. This is the My Taught You podcast, and I am back with one of my infamous interviews today. Today, I am talking to Jermaine Hall, who I have a very interesting story of how we met, but we will get to that later. I want to spend some time telling you about who Jermaine Hall is. Jermaine was born in St. Lucia and raised in Queens, New York. He soared to the heights of track and field as a nationally ranked college athlete. The discipline and perseverance that led him to compete at the highest level of sports have defined his winning career. Following graduate school, Jermaine began his digitally native career at the infancy of the consumer web. An internship at Vibe magazine earned him a position in its media ventures department, where he served as Vibe.com's online editor-in-chief. It was here that Jermaine's passion for music and entertainment intersected with his journalism degrees, evolved the website from an online hub of repurposed magazine content to become the online authority for hip-hop music, culture, and breaking news. The website's growth under Hall's leadership helped commercialize the fledgling department, resulting in its first ever profitable year. Now we're going to get into where he worked. Jermaine went on to hold senior positions at award-winning media titles, including The Source, XXL, and King, which remains one of my favorites, where at each he was instrumental in record-breaking results across circulation, website visitors, and overall organizational growth. Jermaine used these roles to build his expansive celebrity network, collaborating on content packages with icons like Puff Daddy, Leonardo DiCaprio, George Lucas, Kris Jenner, and I think this is pretty cool, at King, he gave Kim Kardashian her first ever magazine cover. I didn't know that. He has been a contributor on CNN, Entertainment Tonight, USA Today, and the New York Times. So today, Jermaine is the vice president and managing editor of BET Digital, where he counts his biggest success as the turnaround of digital content operations that he was hired for. So Jermaine has spent his career forming the vision, crafting the voice, and producing groundbreaking and viral content for the most powerful publishers at the intersection of urban and celebrity culture and breaking news. Jermaine.
That's a whole lot.
I know. This is every time I read people's bios back to them, they're just like, wait, who is this? So
that's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody ever feels like they're that person. So I had no idea that you ran track. I ran track from the ages of 8 to 18. And I attribute a lot of my success to that time in my life. What specifically about track and field, or even just being an athlete, do you believe has contributed to your professional success today?
Discipline. I think track, for you to be a really good track athlete, you have to be disciplined, because there's going to be people out there who are willing to outwork you.
Mm-hmm.
Because we all come in at a certain level, at least the people who are going to go on to compete in college. And the difference between that talent that you've been given by God and being one of the best runners in the country, it's the work, it's the discipline. It's like making sure you do your morning runs, making sure you do your afternoon runs, making sure when you have those structured practices that you're focused, making sure that you're eating correctly. So I've taken that discipline. I've pretty much applied it at everywhere that I've been.
Mm-hmm. So you're a pretty disciplined person. Like, are you really strict with yourself?
I am. I think I'm also very, very hard on myself, which also comes from track and field, because it's very much a team sport at the core of it. And
it is.
I remember there was this one moment I can never forget it. It was a distance medley relay, and I think I was running the 200-meter leg.
Okay.
And I bombed like horrible. I was just coming off of an injury, wasn't really in the greatest of shape. And I remember getting off the track, walking into the middle of the field, and just crying uncontrollably.
Really?
because because I had let my team down. If you're
Mm,
running an individual race, and you suck, that's on you. You
right.
lose. But when it's a team race and you bomb out, there's three other people as well as an entire team that you've let down.
Yeah.
And that point always that particular point in my life always sticks with me because I don't ever want to feel like that again.
Wow. Do you feel like you weren't prepared? You said you were coming off an injury. Like, are you just being hard on yourself or do you feel like there's more that you could have done?
I think I gave up.
Okay.
I think I gave up. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was coming off an injury, but I had done enough of the work prior to that injury,
Mm.
where I was still in pretty good shape, uh, but mentally
Yep.
I just wasn't ready mentally, and I
Yeah.
gave up.
That's I ran track from ages 8 to 18 and we were undefeated in the 4x400 relay. And I hated the 400. And to this day, we still have a record. I think we ran I could be wrong. It's been so long. I think we were 14, 15 years old and we ran a 3 minute, 45-second mile. And I feel like track seems like an individual sport, but is very much a team sport. And I feel like I always am better when I'm having to play for the team versus when I'm having to play for do it for myself. And I think that I'm a very disciplined person, and I never really realized the practice all the time. And I feel like discipline for me, and I'll ask you this question, discipline for me is doing the things that I absolutely do not want to do. I think people think I like working out. I don't. um, what are some ways that you exercise discipline, Jermaine? Like, what's your thing, or what are the things that you're doing that you absolutely just don't like?
It's funny that you say that because I think people think that I really love consuming every single minute of the day.
Okay. Okay.
And don't get me wrong, like, I love to read, I love to keep up on what's going on, I love to see what the competitors are doing. And that's all part of the gig. But the amount of content that you now have to keep up with has
Yes.
tripled and quadrupled.
Yep.
And it starts to, I got to be honest, it starts to feel like homework some of the time.
Yep.
It's
Versus just
all
grabbing your favorite mags and posting up for the weekend.
right, right. It's like to me that was enjoyable. Like coming out of the house, going to the newsstand, getting the latest GQ, reading through it, sort of figuring out like, okay, this I see what they did here. I see what they did here. How can I apply that to my everyday content world? Coming up with content for different mediums. But it's like now we're going. I'm reading. You're reading mags. You're reading countless sites. You're listening to countless podcasts. It is just an influx of a ton of information that you have to take in, which really takes up your entire day.
Absolutely. And there's still work to be done. But I want to transition because I feel like we could talk about this forever. So you and I caught up last weekend for several hours. And it feels like forever ago that I was just calling up to your office, offering your advice that you didn't really ask for. I mentioned you in my interview with Daytwan, and I told him that I used to call up to King when you guys worked together and that you would take my calls with my suggestions for the magazine. And I have to tell you that no one would listen to me or even give me an opportunity to share my ideas the way that you did. So my very simple question to you is, why did you do that?
Oh, very simple, very simple. I always believe. I think in a structured editorial world, sometimes people tend to operate within a bubble, um, and you're only listening to people for the most part that work at your gig. But I think where the jewels really come from. They can come from the outside. You know, they can come from someone who's an intern, who's not so much, you know, involved in their system every single day. Uh, but they have their opinions, and they have ideas. So I value those opinions just as much as I value the opinions of people who are working there from day to day, because it gives me an outside perspective that I just might not be really thinking of.
Right. Daytwan told us this really interesting story about how he got his internship at Vibe. How did you go about getting an internship at Vibe?
Oh man.
A lot of people who listen, they're wanting to know how to get internships, and I know that things have changed a ton, but I'd love to hear about how you got the internship and maybe some advice on getting an internship today.
I mean, so what I did is, you know, I went the traditional route at first, which is, you know, I sent my resume along
Okay.
to the person who was I think she was a editorial assistant at the time. They called me in, and I remember wearing this green suit, like super like corporate and buttoned up.
Okay.
And when I got there, I was like, yo, there is nobody here that is remotely dressed up. What am I doing?
But I feel like that's who you are. I feel like you button up.
Yes. And like inherently, that is absolutely who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't need to be that in that moment.
Okay. Okay.
So, you know, go through the interview. I think I spoke to Carter Harris after the editorial assistant. I think Carter might have been executive editor at the time, so he was high up there.
Okay.
And then I think I also met Karen Good briefly, who I idolized because her writing was just so powerful to me.
Okay.
I get the call back, and they're like, "Hey, you know, you're going to be one of the interns for the fall semester. Congrats!" I was like, "Awesome, cool. This is great."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had to. That was also my first year of grad school, so I needed to find a balance to try and make that work. Because what I found was I would go to Vibe, and I wouldn't want to leave. I would be there forever, just transcribing, putting together news packets that I could hand around to all of the editors. You know, I remember there was an Aaliyah story that they had me transcribe, and like to me that was like utopia. I was like, man, this is crazy. Like I'm actually hearing an interview from Aaliyah that was done by a Vibe writer. That's insane to me.
Right.
So, you know, I soaked up as much knowledge as I could. I would walk around, ask questions all the time. I'm sure they were like tired of me, like, why does this dude like come in every single time and have a million questions?
Right.
I'm sure that was a pain, but I was just trying to soak up as much as possible.
Okay.
And then my internship came to an end, and the rule at Vibe was the hard rule was you could only intern for one semester,
Yep.
no matter what. So I was like, you know what, I enjoy this place way too much for it to be one semester. So I was like, what's a loophole? Where, like, how can I get around this?
Mm-hmm.
So I went down to the digital department, and Black Spot was running it at the time. Larry Hester. Larry was probably most well known for writing the Big and Puff cover story with the East Coast versus West Coast cover line.
Mm-hmm.
So Black was like, "Yo, what's good?" And I was like, "Hey man, like my internship is over. You know, I only had my semester's done. You can only do one semester. Is there any way I could like sneak in and intern for you? Because technically that's not really interning for the magazine. You know, it's interning for .com." I think in his mind he was just like, "Oh, this kid's trying to hustle."
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Technically.
I think he found it funny, and he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So, I was able to get that second semester at Vibe, and that was so pivotal to my career.
Really?
Oh my God, like so pivotal. Because during that time, Big had passed, and we needed to get information out there as soon as possible.
Right. And you can't wait for a news cycle.
Right.
Like a big glossy, because it takes like 3 months before a mag comes out typically, right? That's what I remember from my PR days. It probably has changed, but it takes a long time for a magazine to hit the stands.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally we were always like 3 months ahead as far as the production cycle. So, Black calls everybody in the day after Big's passing. Well, actually the same day, because I believe he died like late that night. Because I remember Angie Martinez jumping on Hot 97, crying, being she was in tears, making that announcement. So Black Spot calls in all hands on deck. It's myself, Datewan, because Dave was interning at the same time, and we all put together our little pieces, our remembrances on Big. So we all approached it at a different angle.
Okay.
And that was really like my first substantial piece of writing.
Okay.
And it was for the .com. Like I every now and then I go back and I read that piece, and I cringe, because it's the writing is so bad, but
yes,
but the idea and the intent is there.
Yes,
the writing is bad.
I feel like that when I go back and listen to things that I've recorded or interviews. Like I recently was on the cover of a magazine, and they used an interview from like 4 years ago, and I was like, ooh, I'm not the same person.
This is upscale.
Yeah. And they said that if there's a quote that I was reading that said, like, if who you were, say 3, 4 or 5 years ago doesn't embarrass you, like you're not trying hard enough or something like that. And so people like, I shouldn't be embarrassed, but like sometimes it's kind of embarrassing. Not that you shouldn't be further along because you have to grow, but going back is like, yikes. So you can still find that. You can still read. So you go back and sort of like read what you wrote, and you're like, eeh.
Yeah, like I printed it out. I have several copies at the house stored away.
Okay.
So, if it ever gets lost, like I have plenty of copies to go check it out, because for me, even though, like I said, even though the reading bad, I still get a kick out of it.
Right.
And the fact that it's tied to Big, who is my favorite MC of all time.
Okay.
I see it as valuable.
Got it. So if you could, like one thing, because now you are in VP mode, and I don't know if you do any choosing of interns, but a lot of people are looking for internships in the space that you're in now. And so things have changed. What's one thing you think younger people can do, or, anyone even just not even younger looking to change their career can do to earn an internship and get in the doors?
Man, that's a great question. Because the process now is a little bit more corporatized, because it's Viacom, and Viacom just has certain rules for internships. Like it needs to come from them, or at least they put the people in front of you, and then
okay,
different brands sort of select who they want from that.
Gotcha.
But once those interns get in the door,
okay, that's a good.
I think, not to cut you off, I think what they don't realize is that even though they're just on the intern level, like I'm always looking.
Mm-hmm, right.
Always looking at like how you move, what you do, what are the conversations you're having with my direct reports? What are the conversations that you're having with my direct reports? I'm
Wow.
always
Right.
I'm paying attention, and uh, the most disappointing thing for me when someone interns at BET
Mm-hmm.
is them not making an effort. And maybe they're scared. Maybe they think that this meeting just isn't possible. But if you leave that internship without having a conversation and a sit down meeting with me,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you've done yourself a disservice.
Okay.
Because I'm completely open to any level.
Okay.
Which sort of goes back to you and I talking about you calling and me taking your suggestions at King. I'm just I'm open to any level, because I I feel like I'm really good at spotting talent
Okay.
in its rawest form, and it's yeah. So I really love when interns take the initiative and be like, hey, my internship's about to end, but I'm going to make sure that we had a conversation before I left.
Thank you for that, because I was going to ask, how do you recommend they go about it? Because a lot of times people are sort of afraid. You see the VP, and now I look back, I had an internship in New York at Unilever, working on the Calvin Klein classic brand fragrances team, and I never really saw the boss. That was the VP, and I was so afraid to like approach her that I ended up leaving the internship, never asking to have a sit down. So, I'm glad that you gave that, because that was, a tip that I just didn't know, and probably figured she seemed so disinterested in me the very first time we met that I was just like, yeah, I didn't have the guts to go back and do it again.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. I didn't have the guts. I'm better. I'm much better now, but I didn't have the guts then. And I think not having the guts was just not having the confidence. Like I didn't really believe that I belonged there. And I've told the story because I kind of cheated my way into the internship a little bit. There were some requirements that you needed to have that I didn't have, that I made happen. So I was kind of there, like not trying to get figured out. So it's like, don't rock the boat, girl. But I always say that confidence usually comes from like having from actually knowing. And because I don't think I really knew what the heck I was doing, I didn't have the confidence. But that's me spilling the tea.
What's funny about that is when I see you, I see a person who is so uber confident that they would never be not afraid to approach anyone. Like I see you approaching like the president of the company.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm here.
I worked my way up to that point. I think I finally had to realize, and my friend Lovey says this, is like, once you're in the room, you have to understand that you now deserve to be there. A lot of times we're in these rooms and it's like, well, like, do y'all know that I don't really know, or whatever? And so it's just, I've had to say, once you're there, you now deserve to be there. So it's time to get busy. And I realized that like the competition is thick, and the people who get ahead are the people who aren't afraid to speak up. And so that takes me to my next conversation. We were having this conversation about, it seems like people aren't really making professional names for themselves anymore. Like you were saying, Carter Harris and Karen Good, and there's these names, and I remember looking up to those names. People were charting paths. Why do you think people don't seem to be as interested in sort of this long game? Because I feel like every year I set an intention, and my intention for like sharing for 2019 is this marathon mindset. It doesn't seem like that's happening anymore. So what advice would you give to someone who is maybe starting out, and about how to potentially go about making a name for themselves?
It's all about changing with technology, changing with what's going on. It's I saw a lot of people, very prominent people in the print world, excuse me, really push back on what was happening with .com. But you can't fight technology. You just gotta kind of roll with it, redefine yourself, understand the medium, and learn how to tell stories, which is pretty much what these people have been doing. But just learning to tell stories for a different medium. And then I think what I've also noticed is that a lot of those print magazine editors and writers have really found a space in Hollywood. So not that not that they're not up on .com or know how to operate within the parameters of what's going on there, but I think their aspirations were just different. They wanted to tell. They wanted to take their storytelling ability and really apply that in the Hollywood space. Because if you look at what Mimi is doing with Pharrell, like she's telling amazing stories. What she did with Roxanne on Netflix is fantastic. And then
Yes.
if you look at Cheo, who's pretty much been at a very high level in Hollywood for a long time now, and then what he's done with Luke Cage, it's a great story. So some people have been able to adapt to .com. Some people moved into other mediums, and then I think the people who have fought it or didn't take the time to really learn these different mediums sort of fell by the side.
Yeah. So for young people who I feel like things are changing so quickly for them, it's like 1 minute they're 1 minute they're an influencer on Facebook, and the next minute they need to be one on Instagram, the next minute they need to be one on Snapchat, the next minute they need to make video. I mean, based on what you know from having this sort of like long career, is there some sort of like common denominator or this constant that people should keep in mind as the mediums change?
At the at the core of it,
Mm-hmm.
it's be entertaining.
Ooh.
That's at the very core of it.
Okay.
If you're a true entertainer, and you can hold people's attention for long periods of time, like no matter what the medium is, like you're going to win. Like I'll give this example. There was this influencer that we worked with recently, to create a show, and it was a kind of like comedy news show, and the idea was to have her take the characters that she's developed on Instagram and then apply them to this video franchise.
Okay.
She really fought with us, like, hey, understand the concept. That's not really what I want to do. I'd rather do B instead of A. And we were like, okay, cool. Trust us that we understand that what you're doing right now is entertaining. And if you do A, you will be exponentially more successful with this franchise. And so she didn't listen, and then she chose to do B.
Okay.
and it was a complete bust.
Wow.
She did do A for the first episode, which was successful numbers wise, but still wanted to do what she thought was the better option. And the series bombed from that point on.
You think it's difficult for people to listen and take suggestions when they feel like what they're doing is working? I feel like social media is kind of like does that. So my experience, you're saying be entertaining, and my thing is like be interesting. A lot of people they aren't that interesting, and in photos you don't really have to be interesting. But then once you start getting into video, which you've got to open up your mouth at some point. But I feel like we've tried to lift people off Instagram And I have found that like people can really craft their own story, but then when you get them into your world or just the real world, they can't do any of the stuff they're able to do. So you can take 10,000 selfies to get the most beautiful picture. But when, you've flown in a photographer and you only got so much studio time, well, we can't take 10,000 pictures.
Right.
And so
I think it's a lot easier. It's easier to be funny, entertaining, charismatic in 60 seconds.
ooh.
But what happens when you get picked to do something that's 10 to 15 minutes long, and there's not just your camera there, but there's like 5 cameras with like bright lights, and
Yeah.
there's a ton of people walking around. Like it's not just you in your room. It's a really different situation.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think the people who can thrive in in that sort of arena, like those are the people who can entertain no matter what. Like I look at Jess Hilarious, and I think she's hysterical. I'm so sad I didn't get a chance to work with her as of yet, because I think she's a tremendous talent.
Okay.
But I feel like whether Jess is on a comedy stage, whether she's on Instagram, whether she's on Rel on Fox, she's completely entertaining every single time.
Yeah. Is that the girl who just wished Drake like a happy birthday or something? Was that? I'm not in the loop at all. Drake posted that some girl, he reposted. I had never seen him do something like this, but he reposted like some Insta comedians thing. And I think that might be her because I remember her name from there. But you're having to digest all this content. Maybe you haven't seen it, but it was
I gotta go check for
you
that.
have to go check it. It was funny. She was saying she was in Times Square, that Google needs to get the show dates correct. It was funny.
As a small business owner, how many of you hate dealing with all of the tedious admin and paperwork? Don't worry, you're not alone. You need to set aside that frustration you're feeling because there's a more enlightened way to look at the situation. Let's look at it this way. If you're still managing to deal with your paperwork on your own by using a spreadsheet, then you're going to absolutely crush it when you start getting help from FreshBooks. You see, FreshBooks has created ridiculously easy to use cloud accounting software for self-employed people who would rather spend their precious time building their businesses than dealing with mountains of paperwork. One thing I really love about FreshBooks is that you can send clean and professional looking invoices in about 30 seconds. And with literally 2 clicks, you can set yourself up to receive payments online. We all like doing that. For your free 30-day unrestricted trial, just go to freshbooks.com/mytaughtyou and enter My Taught You in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
You seem to be incredibly goal-oriented, Jermaine, when you take on a role. It's all about putting numbers on the board. That's kind of what I feel like that's your thing. I want to know what sort of advice you can give to my listeners on how they can set some concrete goals when they get a new job, or the first 90 days in a new role. You're going in. What is Jermaine doing when he's taking on a new role?
I won't even interview for a gig if I don't have a very like a specific goal in mind. Like when I came into BET, before I even interviewed.
That was a gem, by the way. I hate to cut you off, but I think people don't realize that I won't even interview for a gig unless I have a specific goal in mind. Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that.
Because I don't want to. I'm going to give it my all, and I don't want to shortchange anybody. So if I don't have a goal that's gonna improve your company, then I don't need to be there, and you don't need to have me there. So I think that's what it is. But when I came into BET, I looked at their ComScore number, and I looked at how much they were spending a year, like what their budget was for this department a year, and it just it completely didn't add up. So my goal coming in was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to get this place to 15 million in ComScore. And I think at the time they might have been at 3 or 4 million in ComScore. So 2 years in, we looked up, and I forget what month it was. It was one of those Junes, because I remember the BET Awards was happening. But we hit 18 million in ComScore, and have been pretty consistent, like around 12, 13, 14 million a month. But yeah, that was so I was able to hit the goal. I was able to surpass the goal. And once you surpass the goal, that's sort of a dangerous time too, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
what happens is it's like, okay, are you
Now
going
what?
to be complacent,
Right, right,
or are you going to set a new goal that's going to keep you interested and advance this company? So once I hit that 18 million, that was kind of a scary time for me,
right.
because the goal was done.
So now what? New goal?
Oh yeah, the new goal came quickly.
Okay.
Uh, the new goal came quickly. I decided that I was going to make such a dent in short form and mid form digital original video content,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and that's the new narrative that I was going to be known for. Um, And since then, I think we've done a pretty good job. We've established a lot of franchises,
Mm-hmm.
and we've raised our video views exponentially through these digital originals.
That's amazing. Rate the bars, which I think I see all the time. The one with Nivea, which I felt like I saw, which was crazy amazing. But I guess I want to know too, from just like the other side of it. You're a VP now, and you're looking out at people. When somebody's starting to work for you in the first 90 days, what are you looking for? What, because we really want to help people go in and make an impact. I think, saying that you just wouldn't even interview. A lot of people, I don't even think people are interviewing with goals in mind. So what are you looking for in someone's first 90 days working for you?
And the first, I think you can't expect results from that person ASAP.
Okay.
Uh, I think you have a 30 to 60-day window where, you're just sort of like, it's a learning curve. You're learning a new system, you're learning new people, because you might come into a situation where the people that you have working for you aren't necessarily, they're not people that you hire. You don't know their capabilities,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know their habits. So you need to learn all of that before you jump in and start getting into the weeds. Like, you really have to know what you're playing with. So I would say taking those 60 to 90 days to really understand what you're working with before you start to communicate to your boss, hey, here is where I think I can take this vertical, or
Mm,
whatever it is, um, based on the talent that is here. Here are their strengths, here are their weaknesses, here's how I think I can help bolster these weaknesses, and then we go from there.
nice. Okay. I can be wrong, but I feel like you come in and make changes. You stir things up. And from our very limited personal interaction, I've never got the feeling that you have a sort of loud or robust like temperament. How do you get things done so mildly? And so I feel like I feel like you are very mild, and I am not mild, and I know people that are around you or who are friends with you who are absolutely not mild, but you always seem to thrive as like the quietest person in the room. And I have a lot of people who write me like, hey, I'm not the one who's going to be the loudest. Um, how do you, or maybe you don't feel this way, but how do you feel like you get so much done as mild as you are in like a business that sort of demands this kind of tiger roar?
Oh man, that's a great question. That's a fantastic question. I don't. I never felt like I needed to be the loudest voice in the room, um, but I always felt like I needed to be the voice in the room with a plan. Like
Ooh.
that's always the voice that I'm gonna be. Like you can 100% count on the fact that I am going to have a plan and I'm going to execute it. And I know all the players on the chessboard and I know who can do what.
Ooh.
And I can assess that very, very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And then within my team, within my unit, within whoever is reporting to me, I can be loud. I can be loud within that without physically having to be loud. All I need them to understand and to believe in is that, hey, this guy who's leading us absolutely has a beginning, middle, and end to get us where we need to be. Um, and also this guy is very comfortable. He's very comfortable with like not being the smartest person in the room. And I know everyone says that, but in order to lead, to be a really effective leader, you really need to have people who are smarter than you within your unit. You just have to.
Wow. That's one of our listener questions is about that. So I'm glad you brought that up. So before we get into the listener questions, because those are going to take a second, one of the things that really surprised me as a young woman when I was coming up in PR was that you and Daquan were both married. And I just didn't know Black men, young Black men that were just like married, and you guys are still married. I feel like your wife is a boss. And how do you support your wife while being equally ambitious? You know, I think a lot of us wonder, how do you do that?
Man, that's another great question. Oh, you killing me. You killing me, Molly.
I know, sorry. And then we're gonna get into some fun stuff.
My wife's an Uber boss. My wife's a bigger boss than I am. And I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way, the way that we make it work is, we're fine to run things by each other. So, for instance, she'll be working because she's on the marketing end of things. So she'll be working on a digital campaign, and then, she'll run it by me. And, I'll give my opinion on it. If there's people that I think have a better opinion than I have, I'll make sure to put her in connection with those people. So there's because our worlds are a little similar. I mean, she's dealing more with like fashion and beauty than what I'm doing, which is very much so around celebrity and culture. I'm still able at the core able to help her tell a good story, and then she does the same. She does the same for me. I'll run my ideas by her, and she'll be like, "Oh, okay, well, maybe you should think about it this way."
Right.
And I'll be like, "Oh, all right, that makes absolute sense." I think I have an example that I think it took place like Friday or Thursday. We were talking about the Webbies because it's time to submit for awards, and I'm going over all of the categories, and she's done a ton of Webby submissions. So she was like, "Hey, listen, rather than you do all of this guessing, here's someone that I know at the Webbies who can probably walk you through what is the best category for you to submit in." So it's like, man, that's invaluable right there.
Right.
That's great.
Right. Right. But I feel like versus having like a sort of ego, like, but I feel like that's sort of who you are, is that what the thing that makes you okay to take my call is also the thing that makes you sort of a listener. And this probably has nothing to do with anything, but I feel like saying it. One time I interviewed Rich Dennis, who I would say I'm friends with, who was he founded Shea Moisture, sold it, and just bought Essence. And one thing he said that he feels makes him successful is his ability to listen to women. He's like, I listen to my wife. Like I can listen to women. And I think, I just thought that was huge. Like, I feel like a lot of men succeed when they can listen to women. Just saying, fellas.
This that's a great point. And that throughout, when I look back at it, I think starting with King specifically, I've for the most part had women on my staff more than men. When people hear that about King, they're always like, "Oh, whatever. What are you talking about?" But there were a lot of women on that staff, tons. And as editor in chief of Vibe, most of my staff, women. Here currently at BET, I would say 90% of my staff, women.
Listen, I know. I feel like I've succeeded with a company of basically 97% women. Like, we have mostly women. I think women are amazing. And I think more men need to realize that when hiring, that women really are the future. I just took Noah yesterday. He wore his the future is female onesie because he needs to know that too.
That's great.
Yes. Great. So I am going to, I got a couple of listener questions, just two. So we'll answer these and then I'll let you just tell us where we can find you and all that good stuff. But I want your answer on this. Here's the backstory to my question. 1 year ago, I was laid off from my corporate banking job after 5 years of employment. Honestly, it was a blessing in disguise as I was miserable and constantly lamenting over not being able to pursue my passion of teaching group exercise full time. I knew I would receive a decent severance package after the layoff. So I took that time to figure out a plan and try to teach full time, make the same or more than I made at the bank. Fast forward to present day, and I'm doing it, my leak. I went from teaching 9 to roughly 17 classes per week. I wake up every day and get to dance, exercise for a living. It is incredible. It is amazing and rewarding. Here's the but. It is also extremely exhausting. I thought so when I was like 17 classes a week. It is extremely exhausting and nowhere near my salary at the bank. I was comforted by previous podcasts where you spoke about being willing to take a pay cut to pursue your passion. And while this is rewarding and fulfilling to my soul, it is devastating to barely make ends meet, having high anxiety over not knowing if your paycheck is going to come in, time to pay your rent and other expenses. I even feel some regret over not saving money when I had the comfy bank job with the highest salary and benefits because the struggle is so real for me right now. I have picked up a side job working for one of the gym's front desk, and it helps very little. And I now work 7 days a week as a result. It's an easy sit down job, so not physically tiring, but never having a day off mentally makes me feel burnout on a regular basis. I'm not even sure what my question is, but maybe just wanting feedback on how to keep a positive attitude and keep my momentum going. Every time I think about going to get a regular job, I feel nauseous. It doesn't even feel like an option, but I would be lying if I said I didn't miss the stability and financial security of my old job. Any thoughts you have? She says she's going to get into personal training at some point, but any thoughts would be helpful. What do you think about this? I have some thoughts, but do you have any, or do you want me to go first?
That's I'll give my
yes. Okay, go.
Thoughts. That was a lot. And I would say being happy with what you're doing as a profession is so key. It's so critical. If you're just doing a 9 to 5, I don't care how much money you're making and you're not into it, it is such a drag. It is such a drag. So if this person just continues to do what they're doing, something that they're actually incredibly passionate about, the rewards will come down the line. And there was something in there about working 7 days a week, um, and being physically exhausted, which is interesting because I feel like now with this always on environment, most people are working 7 days a week, and whether it's physical exhaustion or mental or mental exhaustion, I think we've all experienced getting to that level. But with all that said, I think if they continue with their passion, it will turn into dollars, and hopefully less stress down the line.
I agree. And I think the next question would be like, well, when or what can I do? And I always say, like, if you're not waiting and you're working and you're doing a great job, someone is going to notice, right? In those 17 classes, and the more you do, people are going to notice. And at some point, your opportunity to maybe become a trainer, a regional trainer, and then national trainer, and then an opportunity. Maybe you have crafted some moves that you want to start sharing your life with us on social. And maybe you're doing, adding one more thing to your plate, or just maybe recording some of this as you're teaching. So in one of those 17 classes, maybe you turn the phone or the camera on and do a live, and those people start picking up. And I always feel like, I think one of my friends told me this, and I could be wrong, but they said 2% of your following will pretty much buy whatever you do or sell. And so there's an opportunity to sort of pick people up along the way and invite the public onto your journey, because there's someone who either wants to get fit with you, or there's someone who is going to be inspired by your journey. And there typically tends to be a dollar or an opportunity there. I think.
I think that's great advice. Who's someone who I always think about when I hear stories like this. Nicole, formerly of Nicole Bitchy.
Mm-hmm.
She had a business where it was thriving. She was putting a lot into it. The type of content that she was creating, it didn't at some point it didn't fit right. It didn't sit right with her soul.
Mm-hmm.
And she chose to walk away from it and completely rebrand herself and really focus on the positivity uh, of entertainment. Now, is she making more? Is she making more, or is she making less than she did when she was Nicole Bitchy? I mean, probably, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but I think she feels, and her soul feels great doing what she's doing right now.
Yeah. I talked to her about it. I interviewed her when she left the bitchy site behind and went on to do the new site. And when she went to do the new site, that was going to be more uplifting and made her feel better. She was broke for a while, and like we joke, because I'm like, okay, you're broke, but driving a Range Rover. So it's a different kind of broke, like, okay, broke. But it was just sort of like, but she had roommates and stuff like that. And then it was at that point that Will Packer came along and bought the site, and so now she can really live this life of her dreams, where she can go and compete in all these bikini competitions that she loves. But we had a really good long conversation about it. And the crazy thing was that she was like, Myleik, I kind of look to you to sort of transition out of, because I did the entertainment PR and I just felt like it no longer served me. So I moved on, and I had a hard period, but look at me now. I was broke, not in a Range Rover, but I think we all kind of have to, when we're transitioning, you have to dip down for a little bit, and it may be a year, it may be two, but the tide changes.
Oh, I mean, for sure. I look at, and obviously has been nowhere near being broke, but I look at someone like Elliot Wilson, and the way I mean, that guy's a chameleon.
Mm-hmm.
The way he's been able to adapt to whatever the technology is,
Yeah.
adapt to telling stories for newer audiences. I think he's one of the best examples of redefinition, redefining your your career. Every
Yeah.
time I think he's hit a ceiling, he finds a way to take it a step further.
Yeah. Okay. This is our last question. The next one. A question for you about adjusting your friend circle. You often speak about how we should be mindful of our circle. We shouldn't be the best or smartest in our circle. The thing is, how do you facilitate meaningful relationships with those who are better or smarter if they already have their circle or are leveling up themselves? Why would they invite you to stay in? I mean, I have a great personality and all, but I'm not quick to believe that someone on a higher level in an area I aspire to grow into would go beyond a surface level relationship when they already have their circles. This is particularly important for me because I don't necessarily seek to connect with people who have connections or knowledge or wealth, though all of that is great. I want to connect with those who have great intangibles like strong relational boundaries, superb work ethic, great communication skills in spite of ego. These are the areas I'm growing in. So why would someone strong in that area want to connect with someone weaker? Part of me wonders if I'm projecting because I no longer associate myself with those who, for example, have poor boundaries. I'm willing to share my journey, answer questions, even meet up, but I wouldn't necessarily bring them in my circle. Would love to hear your thoughts. Do you have any?
Ooh. So the question is coming from someone who is trying to get into
bigger circles or
a
just
tight circle?
yeah, well, she's saying, how do you get into a circle with smarter or, people who may be further along than you, So it's like, you say I shouldn't be the smartest person in my group, but how do I get into the smarter groups? Do you know?
Got it. I think it's I think it goes back to the intern example that I gave earlier on. You really have to just take a leap of faith and engage those people. Like, what do you have to lose?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give I can think of an example that is true to me. I would say my circle, my true core circle is there's 5, 6 people, maybe probably 5, um, to be 100% honest.
Okay.
People who share, we get together, we share ideas, we talk about what's going on in our industry and other industries, talk about family, um, politics, everything. And what happens every now and then is someone from that circle will find somebody that they truly believe in and truly think that they have the ability to make an impact within an industry, and they'll just invite them. Like there's this one place in Tribeca. We call it. My group calls it the Bat Cave.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we call it the Bat Cave is because we know we will never see anybody in the industry there. It'll just be us, but someone will bring somebody into that meeting.
Right.
They'll warn everybody first, like, hey, I know we're meeting on Thursday. I'm bringing such and such, super cool dude. I know you guys have maybe heard of him, but I think he or she is somebody who's going to do things big in the industry. So I think it's really just taking a leap of faith. Like, if you think someone is could be beneficial to you, that's in a bigger circle, that you perceive as being smarter than you, go talk to that person. What do you have to lose?
Right. I think if I would add, like, because I go out a lot of times and I meet a lot of women at the various speaking engagements that I have, one of the biggest mistakes that I always feel like people make is that they'll just bum rush me and be like, here's my business card. And then now what I do is, and I go, and it usually shocks them. And I go, why are you giving this to me? And it's just like,
that's awesome.
because why are you giving this to me? And you know what? 99.9 times out of 10, they don't have a reason. They just feel like this is the thing to do. Go out, give somebody a card, and now we should be connected. And I was like, that's not how you make meaningful connections with people.
Not at all.
You just don't run up on somebody while I'm here working and you're giving. It's like, do you think I'm going to remember you after I talk to, maybe 125 other women tonight? But what you can do, and what I always say is that I call it like my 3 run-in rule, is that run into me 3 different times. That's how I kind of, like, when I wanted to start working in the hair industry, I'd run up on Lisa Price, not giving her a business card, but I wanted her to see me supporting her. Hey, how you doing? I'm Myleik Curlbox. I would just say that. And after a few meetings, and you remember somebody, and they're making waves, and they've got your attention. She was like, she stopped and had a conversation with me, and then it's like she emailed me, and then she asked for my phone number, and then she texted me, and it's like I kind of built the relationship like that. But every time people just give me a business card, I'm just like, why are you giving this to me? Like, do you really think that I'm going to take this home and hit you up? I have no. I don't even know who you are today. And so, I really want people, there's a way. And the other thing is that you're always trying to level up with the person who's on the stage. But what you don't realize is that the person you're sitting next to in the audience is going to be the person on the stage in the next couple of years.
Absolutely.
Connect with that person.
Yeah. Network within your own group. Your peers. But I remember there was a conference that I went to, and I knew Mark Golan was going to be there because he was on the panel. And Mark Golan was he was the editor-in-chief of Maxim at the time. He had just left Details, and my thinking was like, how can I approach Mark after this conference is over and leave a mark on him? And what I came up with is, I'll speak to him about something in his magazine that was memorable, that I think he would make a connection with. So there was a small piece in the front of the book, and they had made a joke with the joke was, it was a question and answer page. I forget what this section was called, but the joke was that if you continue to masturbate, you will go blind. So that was the question. And then the answer, which was amazingly clever, they started to answer, and then the words started to disappear. Like the shading of the words would get lighter and lighter and lighter as you read. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is insanely hysterical. So I referenced that to him. We both had a laugh about it, and we spoke for like we spoke for like a good 10 minutes. And as I walked away, Mark gave me his card and said, hey, keep in touch. Let's get together and have lunch. So sometimes it might just be something. It might just be finding something that person has done in their career, something that is very recent that they can connect with, and they can see like, oh, okay, this guy's actually, or this woman is actually paying attention.
Yes. And that, I agree. That was the other thing too, is that, let them know that you're keeping up with what they're doing, like it's important. So I don't want to hold you, because I know Sundays matter for all of us. For those of you, I'm going to get this up, but we are doing this on the weekend. Jermaine, where can everyone find you and keep up with you?
I am at Jermaine Hall everywhere.
Yes.
Pretty simple. Mm-hmm. JermainHall on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
Awesome.
And Snapchat.
Thank you so much for doing this with me, Jermaine. And I cannot wait to share this with everyone.
Oh, Myleik, thank you. I appreciate it.